Hey tankers, Taugrim here. In this 6th episode of The Art of Warfare, we review the M60A3. This is the Tier 5 American main battle tank in Armored Warfare. This tank offers solid mobility and excellent gun handling. The cannon has a max gun depression of minus 10 degrees, which is superb, and it's highly accurate at an accuracy spread of 0.11. And the targeting time with the proper crew and retrofits, you can get under 2.2 seconds, which is excellent, and it'll allow you to out-aim other main battle tanks. The main armament on this tank is an AP round. The alpha damage is not particularly high at 331. You'll remember the preceding tank actually has an alpha value much higher with its heat round, and the gap between heat and AP on this tank is not as large as on other tanks, so I tend to favor the armor-piercing rounds, its consistency over heat. And I do try to stock these days at least 10 rounds of high explosives, since it's very useful to have against Tier 6 and Tier 7 main battle tanks, especially those that have a very strong armor layout. Before getting into PvP, you'll want to unlock the very first armor upgrade. It's an ERA package, and this explosive reactive armor will significantly increase your survivability against shaped charge rounds such as heat and anti-tank guided missiles. The armor layout's pretty solid. The lower front glacis is a little bit softer than the rest of the hull, but it's not easy to penetrate necessarily. You'll actually bounce a fair number of shots off of it. The main weak spot to be concerned about is the cupola. So this is a fairly large weak spot and it's easy to penetrate, so you'll want to wiggle to keep that hidden as much as possible. So let's take a look at this tank in action. This is a Tier 6 River Point battle, and I want to head down to the 8 line to brawl, but the main thing I need to be concerned about is that they may have enemy AFVs going to F6, and if that happens, I'll get spotted well before I reach the underpass of the highway. So what you want to do is get down here as quickly as possible. I tend to favor taking a line which keeps me pointed north-south, so I'm pretty close to the highway to my left, and that way if I do get spotted and I take some incoming fire, it's most likely going to harmlessly bounce off the front of my hull armor. So the hull in this tank, it is fairly reliable. Same thing with the turret. Aside from the cupola, you just need to make sure to stay hull down as much as possible and keep especially that lower plate hidden. So I've made it safely across to this area here, and we've spotted an MBT-70 coming this way. I make sure to kind of hug the rocks closely on my right, so that way, as soon as I spot any enemy tanks, I'll be able to pull back under hard cover quickly. The main thing that I want to do, since there is an MBT-70 here, is not push up too aggressively. I see a Leo 1A5, and you can see how quickly that gun aims in. 2.2 seconds, or just a little bit underneath that 2.1 seconds for an aim time. And the Leo 1A5 really doesn't have any meaningful armor. It has enough armor in its turret to protect it from getting penetrated easily by autocannon rounds, but otherwise it's pretty squishy. And I'm hiding behind these bushes right here because there are some little rocks that will cover the lower plate on my tank. Now the MBT-70 has a pretty solid armor layout. The best ways to penetrate it, before I get to that actually, this M60A3 is pushed up pretty closely, and there I get a shot through his cupola for full damaging shot. Now the thing about the MBT-70, if you think of it as having a turret as being a human head, the weak spots, as I found out in this battle and by looking at the armor layouts, is an area where the gunner's sight is below the cupola. So that would be an area that would be like around the right eyebrow or right eye of the tank, right around there. You can see it turn green. The MBT-70 also has softness in its lower plate toward the very bottom of the lower plate, but that MBT-70 is on a slight slope, so I can't hit the lower front plate at this time. Now coming out, this M60A3 pushed up quite a bit, and again, his cupola was easily exposed, so I put a shell through there and finish him off. And the main thing we got to be careful of is we just can't simply push up on this MBT-70 to try to flank him, because he is supported by a Leo and by a Chieftain. Now I have switched over to high explosive rounds, and I'm aiming again over by kind of where that right eyebrow area is. There's a gunner's sight, and you can get full penetrations there with AP, but sometimes it's fairly trollish. What I'm doing now with high explosive is just gradually whittling him down. And there's some debate as to whether or not you should be using AP versus HE against main battle tanks. It really depends on the tank that you're facing. In this particular case, we're just trying to soften him up a little bit. And in this particular battle, I was only carrying 6 rounds of high explosive. I used to carry it around primarily to finish off low hit point tanks and to occasionally reset a cap. But there's a lot of value in having it against main battle tanks, especially like if you're facing something like a tier 7 Challenger, which you simply will not be able to penetrate frontally unless you get very lucky. Now right there with that AP round, I shot him through that area of the gunner sight, which is a weak spot. It requires pretty careful aiming. If you're not sure on a given tank where to aim, you can kind of move your aiming reticle around on the hull of the armor and kind of get an idea of the armor layout. It's actually really cool. The color of the aiming reticle also takes into account the angle that you're firing at your target. So if you're aiming at the side of a target, it'll show green. As a tank starts to turn towards you, it'll turn yellow and then red. So it's actually a pretty reliable way in game if you're not sure of a given tank's layout, where to hit it. So there, I did get a shot on that tank, but on the MBT-70, but that wasn't a full damaging shot, and it's fine. We're just trying to whittle this guy away. Our team is down, but really this MBT-70 is the only thing that's keeping us from pushing in on the Chieftain and the Leo. Okay, so the MBT-70 is pushing up quite a bit. His lower plate is now exposed, so I take a shot, but I wasn't aiming low enough. So the next time I get another shot, I aim toward the very bottom of that lower plate, and then get the kill shot there.
Nice, nice.
The Leo 1A5 has been sniping from the back. He's taken some damage from our tanks, and here I have a bit of tunnel vision. I'm so focused on the Leo 1A5 that I don't notice that the Chieftain has moved into my line of sight, and I take a shot from him. I push up quickly, put a shell into him, and then deflect his return shell. And notice that even if he fires at my lower plate, it was angled toward the left, so away from him, so it's more likely to bounce an incoming shot, and then I'm able to push up on him and finish him off. They do have one other MBT-70 in their base, and I'll talk about kind of what he's doing in a moment. Now we're pushing up aggressively on this Leo 1A5. As I'm driving toward him, I use that rock and then that dead tank's body to provide some hard cover, and then as soon as I fire, I cut the angle a little bit to the right here just to use these rocks as additional hard cover, since it's unlikely, if the Leo tries to shoot me on the move, his aiming reticle is going to be pretty large, and it's going to be hard for him to hit a weak spot, especially when he's on the move. In this game, it seems that when you snapshot, when your aiming reticle is still in the process of closing, you're much more likely to get a shot kind of spread out among the aiming reticle than when you wait until you're fully aimed in. I don't know this for fact, it just seems to work that way. I don't have any high explosive to use to finish off this Leo, but his hull is so soft that I'm able to finish him off, and then I pop smokes there to avoid taking return fire from that M60A3 who's on the southeast corner of the town there. And then as soon as the smoke, I'm moving back and forth, by the way, because I'm not sure when their MBT-70 to the south of me is going to get spotted. The A3 is trying to move back across towards their cap point, but I catch him with an easy flanking shot. And then here you can see the aiming reticle color was yellow, so it's not an easy penetration, but I'm able to get him with a kill shot through his lower plate. Now this MBT-70, every time he comes out from behind the rock, he's conceding the first shot advantage to me since I'm already aimed there, and he's fully perpendicular to me, so he's giving me a penetration angle of 0, which is an easy penetration angle, and it's a real mistake. Now the thing is, like, this MBT-70 who's camping in their base actually finishes with top damage on their side, something like 3.3k damage, but the problem is that since he's hanging back and he's a top tier fairly beefy heavy, he's not taking shots and bouncing shots that should have been meant for somebody else. If this MBT-70 had pushed along the 8 line with the other MBT, we probably would have gotten overwhelmed, and we were already losing earlier in the battle. So it's important to play your tank according to its role. I finished with over 5,100 damage and 1,500 spotting, along with 6 kills, and some of that damage came in late, obviously, on that MBT-70 after the battle was already decided. But the main thing is just to be careful about conserving your hit points, not forcing yourself into an area where you're going to take fire from multiple tanks. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the Fox, and then after that, either the BMP tank or the VBL. Let me know your thoughts and feedback on this particular tank and on the video, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.